Chapter 23 On the Road 4. Morning came and we bid our farewells to Joe. Osho, however, drove with us up to Byron Bay. He introduced his daughter to us and showed us the rest of the family in photos. Then a huge meal was prepared for all of us and we dined like royalty. Tomorrow we would leave Byron Bay and make our way up to Cairns. Otto told me to stay in touch and come back down once the girls had left. On the promise of more cultural learning, I agreed and gave up on my round trip then and there. Now it was Meg, Sandra and I again. We were heading to Noosa, but hunger struck soon, so we found ourselves a pie shop. Steak, bacon and cheese pie sat very well with us. Meg even got rid of a Russian coin she had been carrying for weeks now, trying to get rid of it, so it was a double celebration. The joy did not last very long, because in and around Noosa we could not find a free spot to camp. Our only choice was an expensive campground that charged per tent, not per site. So we decided to sleep with 3 people in a 2-person tent. Funny enough, our side neighbors were the English guys we had met in the Blue Mountains a few weeks before. They invited us to share chips and salsa, and we had a wonderful evening exchanging stories of our adventures. It rained all night, and we lay in our tent like sardines in a can, unable to move. None of us felt the urge to get up and take down the washing that we had hung up on a string between 2 trees. The next morning it was wetter than it had been when we hung it up. So we packed it in plastic bags and hoped for dry weather at the next campground. We walked along the coast to Noosa Head, viewing dolphins and easy-on-the-eye surfer dudes in their natural habitat before leaving town. In Gympie we found dryers for our wet laundry. It was still raining, so we decided to use those before our washing got moldy. A fastidious old man with knobbly nose joined us in the laundry and did not stop talking. His stories did not make any sense at all, but he was so charming we kept listening until our washing had dried. It's these little encounters in life that add some flavor to an otherwise quite predictable stew. Camping wild again was glorious. We enjoyed the utter freedom it brought us. Setting your tent up in the middle of nowhere, not knowing whether you are trespassing on someone's property, has a certain kind of thrill. Our gas cooker finally got used again, and we were back on our bleak diet of porridge for breakfast and potatoes and garlic for dinner. It never tasted as good again. Malcolm the Falcon played up once more and stopped driving in the middle of a bridge. We pushed him to the side, cursing and swearing, then waited for the RACQ. The RACQ guy arrived, was stunning, and spent quite a while with us. Nothing was wrong with Malcolm, he just was old and temperamental. He started driving again after a while. As the RACQ guy was about to leave, Meg asked in her usual fresh way, "Do you live somewhere near here? You could invite us for a coffee." I think he was scared of us then and took off quite rapidly. Our driving time was filled with hilarious conversations such as this one. Sandra: "I feel fat in the face." Meg: "I even put weight on my feet." Me: "Look, there's a sign for a chocolate factory." All of us: "Yay!" Some days it got so dark so quickly that we could do nothing but camp at a rest stop by the motorway. Surprisingly, we weren't the only ones. It was usually packed and quite chummy. Sandra was usually the first one awake, because she was constantly hungry and could not wait for breakfast. She'd set up the cooker, and her rattling around would wake us too. We were far enough north that the rivers contained a healthy crocodile population, and we didn't dare bathe in them anymore. Most of the time we showered in roadhouses by the motorway, along with the truckers for whom the showers were installed in the first place. It was a free service to the truck driving workforce that supplied the country with goods, but no one did mind us sharing. We drove via Mackay for supplies of our own and were headed to Finch Hatton Gorge. The waterfalls there were so inviting that we would have loved to jump right in, but none of us felt like Crocodile Dundee, so we resisted. We did not see a crocodile, but an enormous goanna. By the time I had found my camera, the goanna had vanished again. My goanna was one of those animals that kept resisting my efforts to take a picture. Malcolm the falcon had to cross through a few rivers, and I just hoped he wouldn't stop again in the middle of one. But Malcolm made it. There were many sugarcane plantations along the road, and we wondered if sugarcane really tastes of sugar. Meg and I peeled one and started licking, while Sandra stuffed the whole cane in her mouth and started chewing. She was the leanest of us all, yet constantly hungry and eating. It was comical. I can report that sugarcane does indeed taste of sugar. Breakfast tasted best in the company of curious kangaroos. Perhaps because it distracted us from the meager oats. I just loved to sit on a patch of grass, bowl in hand, pretending not to notice the kangaroos. After a while, they were brave enough to inch closer and closer until they could peek into the bowl. We arrived in Airlie Beach, the gateway to the famous Whitsunday Islands, and found ourselves an old-fashioned sailboat owned by a real Italian. He could not have been more cliché. A booming voice with the wonderful Italian accent that always sounds like singing even when screaming at you. A big fat belly and flirty nature. Needless to say, we booked a few days on his boat, not only to see the Whitsundays, but also to indulge in an Italian feast and banter. We had to camp one more night before boarding our vessel. None of us wanted to head out of town, but in towns like Airlie Beach you didn't find campgrounds, nor free sites. Because we had just spent a small fortune on our upcoming sailing adventure, we really didn't want to spend any more money. So we decided to drive to the town's public car park, where we had to leave Malcolm anyway, and camp there. That should have been easy. However, when we rolled onto the car park, we saw the police busy chasing away campers. They surely had the same dilemma we had. We now knew that camping on this car park was not allowed. So we just waited another hour, and after we were sure the police had gone, we got our cooker out and had our signature dish of fried potatoes, onions and garlic. We even had some pumpkin that day for a bit of color. 2 hours had passed since the police patrol, and just as we stowed away the cooker after dinner, they came back for another round. It was already getting dark, and we wondered at what time of the night they would stop patrolling, because Sandra, Meg and I had no intention of leaving. To kill some time, we walked into town and found an ice cream shop where one could help themselves to the toppings. I had never seen such a paradise. Each of us ordered a scoop of ice cream, then proceeded to the toppings bar to load this one scoop with all that was on offer. Our ice creams were drowned in chocolate, caramel and strawberry sauce, nuts, rainbow sprinkles and whipped cream. A not insignificant amount of my chocolate sauce portion landed straight on the floor because it could no longer hold on to my dish. Space issues. You can only pile sauce so high before it runs down the sides. Had we known of this place before dinner, we could have saved some potatoes. When we returned to the car park, it was already past 10 p.m., and we hoped the police had lost the will for patrolling now. We took out one tent and set it up behind the car, hoping for the best. Meg and Sandra are great sleepers. They had no trouble drifting off, whereas I waited to be arrested. I did not sleep very well at all that night. On the bright side, the police had indeed given up patrols.